for anyone that's starting out to start with your own home, leverage that to make it an asset more than just your own home. The architect as developer work pays about 4x more. Just go out and talk to people, like they know what they want to do with their money. You don't have to pressure anyone. You can just say, this is what I'm doing. I've got some opportunities. Like, let's make some money together.
Welcome to the Business of Architecture. I'm your host, Rion Willard, and in this episode, we're joined by an architect with an incredible 20-year journey that spans the globe and touches some of the most iconic building types and locales. Our guest, Josiah Maddock, began his career after graduating from Cal Poly, and his portfolio reads like a dream list for any architect, from cutting-edge high-rise projects in San Francisco and Hawaii to civic landmarks in the Bay Area, luxurious single-family homes across California, and ambitious high-rise and resort developments in China. Josiah has truly done it all. But the story doesn't stop there. Recently, Josiah launched his own boutique architecture firm, carving out a niche in adaptive reuse and high design residential projects. What's more, he's embraced the architect as developer business model, enabling him to not only design, but also own his own projects, delivering work that is not only beautifully crafted and sustainable, but also more efficient and profitable. So join us today as we explore Josiah's journey, his vision for creating impactful architecture, and how his unique approach is shaping the future of our profession. In this episode, we'll be discussing the architect developer and his first projects, the architect's home and how he got started. We'll be looking at investing and working on multiple development projects as an architect for Flip. We'll also be looking at how Josiah is scaling this business model. So loads of golden nuggets there, particularly for those of you who are interested in pursuing the architect developer business model. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Josiah Maddock. This episode is sponsored by Smart Practice, Business of Architecture's flagship program to help you structure your firm for freedom, fulfillment, and financial profit. If you want access for our free training on how to do this, please visit smartpracticemethod.com. Or if you want to speak directly to one of our advisors about how we might be able to help you, please follow the link in the information. We are looking for architect developer stories for the Business of Architecture podcast. So, are you an architect developer with valuable insights to share? We're always on the lookout for passionate voices in the industry to join us on the Business of Architecture podcast. If you're ready to share your journey, lessons, strategies with our global audience, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us to explore being a guest on our show and help inspire other architect developers on their path. We'd be interested in hearing your story, whether you're at the very beginning of your development story or whether you have $100 million portfolio of projects already in the bag completed. We'd like to hear from you if you're working with the developers or that you've developed a number of small houses or you're working at a larger scale. Josiah, welcome to the Business of Architecture. How are you?
I am really good, Ryan. It's great to see you here today, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Now, I was very excited to be speaking with you. I think we met online, didn't we? And
we did.
And I was intrigued because you're doing one of my favorite things to talk about, which is architect developer, or you've started to structure your firm in that way. And have begun the process and have done, you've got a fully fledged architectural practice where you've been involved in for a number of years, and now the development business model has emerged, and it'd be really good just to hear about your experience, pitfalls, flags of danger that you might profess to anybody else. So welcome to the show, Josiah, and perhaps we'll talk a little bit about your architecture practice first, and then we can start talking about how that has evolved into architect developer and what sorts of projects that you've started to be involved in and where you are in the whole bigger scheme of where you want to be going.
Okay, I love it. It's a big question, and I would say the short answer is the two are so linked. My architecture practice and my architect as developer practice started from the same seed and kind of with the same idea. But to tell that story, I think I need to back up a little bit and talk about I was at a big firm before this, Heller Manis Architects in San Francisco. We did a lot of high rise work. I worked on some civic centers, and I spent about a decade in San Francisco working on high rise, large projects around China, Hawaii, San Francisco. And the time came with Heller Manis, and I had an amazing experience there. I had amazing mentors. Jeffrey Heller and Clark Manis were great, and the time came to probably step up to a principal role in that firm. And that coincided with me feeling a little burnt out with that type of work, and kind of resulted in a moment of me really having to take a hard look in the mirror and be like, is this the life you want? Is this the path you want to go down? Is this the practice you want to do? And there were so many upsides to it that I could really see a future with that firm, and stepping into that role, and working on large projects for the rest of my career, and kind of
Mm.
taking over a leadership role there. But when I really looked at it in the mirror, I kind of had to realize that that wasn't exactly the practice that I wanted to have, and that I had had this dream in the background for many years of starting my own firm, and really from the beginning of being my own boss and being entrepreneurial, and going that direction. So that kind of forced me, I think, to make a decision, and so I decided to go out on my own, and took a big risk. And as you and so many people that are listening to and watching this podcast can resonate with that moment, I'm sure, of like, oh my god, is this gonna
So,
work? What are
but
we
it's
doing? Like,
yeah,
is
it's
this
quite
like
interesting as well, like, because you had the choice there of like the road literally forked, and there was a successful career in this direction versus the unknown of setting up your own practice.
Absolutely, and it was such a big moment, and in retrospect, it helped that I was a little burnt out, I think, and because that kind of forced me to be like, okay, I need to take stock. Something's not working here. My body, my mind is, my emotional state is telling me that something's a little off, and I need to take stock. And so, every difficulty has a silver cloud, right? Or silver lining. In that moment, I decided to head out on my own, and it's very scary, and that was two
Hmm.
years ish ago. Um, and from the get-go, I knew I wanted to own my own projects. I knew I wanted to go the architect as developer route, and I'd actually been working towards that in the background for years. And Jonathan Siegel and some other architect as developers were my real heroes and inspirations towards that journey. And I took his course, and I really recommend it. And I as soon as I had heard that idea maybe 10 years ago, I was like, aha, this solves all the problems I have with architecture, from a lack of pay, not making the money that I wanted to make, to more creative control over my projects, to more control over the process and the places that I practiced. And so, having had that moment and kind of been working towards it for many years, it was something where I was fortunate that I had grown to a place where I had done the education, I had done one project, and I was kind of ready to start this for real.
Amazing. So, what sorts of things did you need to make sure were in place, both with your own practice before you felt like this is the time now I can do it, or were you more kind of um, able? You had an appetite for risk, and you were like, "Sod it, let's just go. We'll figure it out as we go along," or a bit of
It,
both.
it was a bit of both, but looking back on the process, I'm kind of surprised in myself because I have quite a big
Hmm.
appetite for risk, but I'm surprised in myself of how long I worked towards it and kind of planned this in the background. Because I've always, in my 20-year career, I've always done side work, and I did, any young architects out there, I do side work. Like, that is like critical. You will learn so much. You will make more money. You'll have more freedom. And so I'd always kind of had work going on in the background. And so at a certain point, about 5 years before I went out on my own, I really started working in earnest towards the architect as developer model, and so I started learning a lot. I spent a year just learning stuff and saving up, spent 3 years, working 70-hour weeks, saving up a little capital, which isn't easy in San Francisco. I think after 3 years of working 2 jobs, I had 100K in the bank, which was
Mhm.
huge for me at the time. That was, I was like, "Oh my god, I've hit this goal. Now I can do a project." And so while I was still working, I started looking for a project, and I ran into this old church in Berkeley, California, and that ended up being my first architecture as developer project. I was able to buy that with that 100K that I'd saved, back when money was 2.75. Money was free basically back then, and so I was able to buy that and do this really nice adaptive reuse project where I turned that into
Mhm.
my home. And so I was working towards that for 5, 6, 7 years, before I actually took the plunge and started my own firm. And so once I had completed that church project, I was like, okay, I can do this. I've done a successful project at this point. I've got some equity built up in this project. I've got all this experience. Like I can do this more. And so that really gave me the confidence to take the plunge. But you don't have to do it that way. You can also just do some learning while you're at your day job and then take the plunge and
Well,
start doing
it
this.
is an
But I
it's in and of itself just raising 100K. No matter whether you borrow it or you save it, or like, and you've got other capital as well. I mean, just putting anything like that up at risk is nail biting for a lot of architects, and and
Oh man, is it ever?
with that first project, what were some of the things? What were kind of some of the key kind of takeaways that you got from doing your own home?
Well, I think one of the key takeaways is that's a really good place to start for anyone that is wanting to go down this path. And I think it's probably the best place to start as far as I am concerned, to start with your own home. And, I did a big, crazy adaptive reuse project, but you don't have to do that. You can just buy a nice old house somewhere or, and build an ADU on the back of the lot or buy a 4 unit building. And it was kind of a combination of house hacking, which is a concept in development, where you somehow get income streams from the house that you're living in, right? And adaptive reuse was what I did. But I think for anyone that's starting out, to start with your own home, leverage that to make it an asset more than just your own home, right? So build an ADU on the back and rent that out and have that ADU pay your mortgage, or buy a small home and build a big house on the back of the lot, or buy a 4 unit building and live in one and rent out the others, or do an adaptive reuse. A really good project type, I think, for architects would be to buy a commercial building, put your house in it, and have your office downstairs, right? I mean, Jonathan Siegel did that as one of his first projects, and, you know, kind of get income streams. And so that, I think I would really recommend leveraging your expertise and your own home to start down this path
That's
for
a
anyone that's
really
interested.
great way of actually kind of, even just the simplest of strategies there, of just building an ADU on the back of the property and renting it out, or designing a different entranceway into it so you can let out a room or something like that. Just thinking about designing an asset which can cash flow something is such a good. It really de-risks as well the whole process. If you're doing it with your own personal property, you know it's great on so many levels, because this is the property as well that you get to showcase for your architecture practice, and then to actually be thinking about it as a business as well, and kind of integrating that. Great. I'm very much a fan of the simplicity of that, and it's not to be overlooked. And many of the people I've had on the show before in the past, where we talk about what was their gateway drug into their architect developer, it was doing the house, but they did something like that where the house was able to generate a little bit of extra revenue, whether it's the ADU that just pays for the property taxes that's coming in off the house. Okay, great. You've enhanced the value there and starting to think like a developer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be really overwhelming to know where to start, right? When you're starting in this journey. And so that's just a very
Hmm.
manageable chunk to take on for any architect. And you can force equity into your house that way. And that shift in thinking of like, okay, here's this kind of, this house that I have that's almost a liability, kind of an asset, but to shift it into an asset that's working for you and like force that equity in, that then you can take that equity for your next project and you've got that experience and you've got some cash flow and it just makes everything a lot
Brilliant.
easier.
So let's talk about like where you're at now and how you moved on from that initial project, your own home. That obviously whetted your appetite for it, and you completed that whilst you were still working full time for this other practice.
Correct. Yeah. And, that is also, I think, a way to really de-risk this process is, keep your day job, keep that income, until you have done a project or two and kind of has their income streams coming in from them. And then, learn some lessons also. I learned a lot and obviously in doing that. And then, then go out on your own when you're a little more ready to. And that's what I did. And so completed that project, lived in it and enjoyed it. It was this big 4-story church. We have a hot tub up on the roof deck, it's just this beautiful,
You're still
beautiful
there?
space. And so we lived at that for a while and, hosted our community there all the time and just had some really nice memories there.
Right.
And then we moved out, we monetized it, we rented it out. So I still own it, it was very successful, but now I've got that income stream, paying for future projects and I have access to that equity if I want it. And so okay, so now remind me of the question. Where are we
Yeah,
at here?
so
I
you
got
you did that
sidetracked.
first project. You actually ended up living in it and
Yep.
then rented it out, and you were doing that whilst you were
Yes.
working. And then how
Yeah.
did you start to do
Yeah.
what you're doing now? What was the kind of the
So, okay, so then I decided I've completed this first project. It was successful. I've got some equity built up. I've got an income stream, so I can do this. So I decided to go out on my own. I hung my own shingle, and I had some client facing projects too. And I would say the first year it was about 50-50 is where my energy was at, client facing projects and architect as developer projects. And that first year I did 2 projects down in LA. I kind of split time between San Francisco and LA, and Napa. Right now I'm actually in Napa. So we're kind of mobile, but we're mostly based in the Bay Area right now. But so built 2 projects down there that first year and those did great. And so now we are more 25% client facing work and 75% architect as developer work. And I think my goal is probably to get to
Mhm.
like 80-20. I'll still do some client facing work if it's a really good fit, but the architect as developer work pays about 4x more. So it's kind of hard to like, and it's just I have all the creative control. It's like and it's just there's so
Mhm.
many bonuses to it that I really am focused on that right now. And so that first year was about like still ironing out some wrinkles and making sure the first year was really about
Mhm.
learning how to raise money and put these projects together, because that's the thing I hadn't done yet with my own house. And that's the thing that we're not taught as architects, right?
So yeah, well, to walk us through that and in what you ended up having to do, and when you went out on your own, then was your priority to win traditional architectural services first, and then kind of get stuck in with these architectural development projects, or you were pretty certain you were going to go straight for the architectural the development projects and just figure out how to raise cash in the process.
So I was certain I wanted to go in that direction, architect as developer, and the client facing work was was nice, and it really helped de-risk that. Having multiple income streams is something that
Mhm.
everyone should focus on, as an architect, and but I knew I wanted to go towards architect as developer, so I was all in on that. So I kept doing a bunch of learning, and I kept doing a bunch of learning towards raising money and networking and putting deals together. And that was kind of the last big piece of the puzzle that I was super afraid to do. And I'm sure a lot of other people feel that way too. That like, oh my God, how do I go out and raise money? So I did, the specific steps I did, because I think people might appreciate hearing about this, is I went and I networked with a bunch of developers. I networked with a bunch of real estate investors. I spent a lot of time in rooms with these people, and they were incredibly friendly and helpful. And I took classes, and I had mentors, and I made an incredible amount of contacts. And I think networking is like should be like, I 15% of your time or 10% of your time. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
incredibly important to have a strong network. And so the developers and the real estate investors really taught me how to raise money in a way that networking with architects was never really going to do. And so kind of branching out and networking with across, across the aisle, I think was really helped me learn that. And so they taught me how to put these deals together. And, at first I was really afraid to go out to my friends and family and be like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I need to raise some money for these projects. But it actually ended up being a fairly trivial, simple thing, and, people had seen me work over the last 20 years, and they, believe in my skill set, and I'm paying 15%, returns on
Mhm.
secured capital, right? So I can go out and I can say, "Hey, I've got a great return in real estate, so you can, get some money out of the stock market if that's what you're wanting to do." And a lot of people do want to do that. And so now we've got more money than we can put to work. We've kind of like the bottleneck now is finding the projects and not finding the money. And so, I would say for anyone that feels nervous or kind of afraid of that part of it is don't be, just go out and talk to people, like they know what they want to do with their money. You don't have to pressure anyone. You can just say, this is what I'm doing. I've got some opportunities. Like, let's
Mhm.
make some money together.
Super. So, what were the first projects then that you got involved in once you set up your own practice?
So the first projects, on the client facing side, I was doing luxury residential stuff, and then on the development side, also luxury residential stuff, but a little less luxury, like a little more humble projects, and which I also think is kind of a great aspect to being able to do this work is you don't have to do $10 million homes for
Mhm.
super wealthy clients. So you can kind of get in the
Yeah.
trenches a little more and provide someone a really nice $1 million home, right? And in which in California is, kind of an affordable home. It's just gonna sound crazy to a lot of people, but that's the fact of the matter over here. And so but that's an aside. But my first projects were a little more, I kind of went down to my a little more humble level, and I just started doing some flips because money's expensive right now. I wanted to be in and out of a
Mhm.
project in 6 months, so I would find a really cool house that had some way to make it kind of a cool architectural project, and buy it, rehab it, sell it, keep the timeline short, and kind of keep things simple. And I kind of had to take a little bit of a step back after doing a big, adaptive reuse project, and on this church and all this. Like, that project probably wouldn't work so well today with money being, private money is 15%, hard money is 11%. Like, I can't hold on to that money for 2 years and have a
Mhm.
project pencil out. So, I kinda took a step back and was like, "Okay, what's a manageable chunk of work that I can do to get this started?" And it was these smaller projects and not holding them for too long. So I did a couple like very cool residential projects that were fairly simple and really, ironed out the kinks to the business model. And so now we're starting to do some ground up development. We just started our first ground up development in Napa. And so now I'm like building up to bigger projects and doing more complex things that
Mhm.
is where I want to go. But I think it's kind of important to take on a manageable chunk of work to start that process because it can be really overwhelming if you're only trying to do boutique resorts and projects that are, these require $5 million worth of capital and
So
things like that.
tell us about one of the projects that you did as a flip. Like, and what did you need to take into account to do that? How did you find the site to begin with? What kind of preparation? How did you raise the finance as well for the construction? And what was the kind of the debt stack like? What was, where was the different money coming from? And
For sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good exercise and I'll get into, specifics with it because I think it's super helpful for people to know the specific steps. So I found this project in Silver Lake, which is an incredible neighborhood in LA. And
I know it well. It's lovely around there.
so we're like, yeah, it's beautiful. And this project is 2 blocks from Erewhon grocery store, which is like the fanciest grocery store in the world, and 2 blocks from
Hmm.
Intelligentsia coffee shop. And so it's like in a good spot, and the location was great, solid, great neighborhood in LA. And I'd been looking at a lot of different projects, and this one was actually off market. It came to me through my network of real estate agents and wholesalers, and so I went and looked at it, bought it the same day, which you can do with off market properties. And I think I had a 10-day close on this, right? So it was in bad shape, but it was this great small project. It was about 1,000 square feet when I bought it. And it was 850K. So, and it was uninhabitable. There was actually a dead rat in the corner of one room when I bought it. So, I think a lot of people would be scared off by it, but I was
These
like,
are the
oh, this is
houses that
perfect.
property
Great.
developers they love the look of when it's all kind of disheveled and decrepit and
Exactly, and it's not gonna be a bidding war over it, and it's, 'cause LA is hot market, man. And, it, so I got so it was 850K to buy it. So I went out and I raised, typically on these projects, I'll raise, say on a $1 million project, I might raise 20% of that from private money lenders. So about 50K was mine. I raised another 150K from friends and family. And then the rest was a hard money loan. So a hard money loan of about, so the hard money will cover 90% of the purchase price plus 100% of the rehab. And then the holding costs and the down payment and all the other costs are going to be about that 20% number. So I had to come up with 200K, which, like I said, I brought some in and then I went out and raised some, but you don't have to bring any of your own money in if you can go raise that 200K. Uh, but a lot of people like to see you bring money in. So bought it for 850. We ended up putting about 300 into it. We actually were able to do the project in 4 months, if you can believe that. And we took it down to studs, got rehab, turned the garage into a little ADU. Made this beautiful Mediterranean backyard, indoor outdoor living. Just really, really made it nice. And it was a small lot, but we had this great front yard, great backyard, classic like LA style. We're able to make some really nice architectural moves to give it curb appeal and one thing or another. And then after about 5 months, and I think that timeline is important too, because that's not something that
Mhm.
you can do unless you're the architect, the client, and you're in charge of that whole thing. It's like the design process when you're the client also is incredibly efficient, and you can just
Mhm.
go for it. And so at that point we had, went 850 plus 300 into it, and then we We sold it. It sold in 6 days on market. It sold for 1.45. So we made a great return on that project, and it was very low risk because it was in such a great
Amazing,
neighborhood.
amazing. And so did you need to
Yeah.
go through an approvals process? Was that part of the 5 months, or was it just that's just the construction?
It was mostly construction and the permitting in LA. They're very pro building. They're very pro housing. Very easy to work with. So the permitting was
Hmm.
was pretty quick, and we were able to kind of phase the way we did permitting to just keep everything going very
Fantastic. And
quickly.
so within five
Yeah.
months you were out, you'd sold.
We 5 months we put it on the market, and it closed in 21
Amazing,
days or something
amazing.
like
So you
that.
so you took a nice
Yeah.
little profit out of what you put in.
Got a great profit. Great. We gave extra money back to
Hmm.
our investors, and because we did that, and they're all
Hmm.
investing with us again. They just all rolled their money over, So it's and now we're off to the races up here in the Bay Area. We've bought 5 houses this year already. Three of them are going to be ground up, and two
Hmm.
are rehabs. And we're starting to look at buying an office building in San Francisco to
Wow,
convert it to
amazing.
residential.
So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. So we've got your private home first, which you did, and you had a kind of sort of financial strategy involved in that, and then you did this flip essentially of the first project, but you were using a mixture of like kind of private finance from people that you'd met through your networking. What makes a good investor? Who are you looking for in these sorts of projects? Who's a good investor? Who would you say, no, I'm not taking your money?
That's a really good question, and I think it's someone that has to be very comfortable with putting
Hmm.
50K down, right? Like I the people that we deal with are mostly they've got a chunk of money in the stock market, and they want to
Hmm.
diversify a little bit, but they're like pretty comfortable with putting that money at risk. They're not going to be like super, super worried about it. I don't want them to be taking any risks that they're uncomfortable with. I would say, comfort and confidence for me is the main thing. If someone's like really nervous about putting that money in, I'll just be like, it's probably not like if you're not pretty comfortable with this level of risk, this isn't, I can't take your money because I don't want to like put you at
Hmm.
risk at all, right? Like there is, these are fairly low risk projects, and they're secured by real estate. So but it's, I the nightmare scenario is to lose someone's money when they can't afford to lose any money, and so I would say the investors that we have are a little more savvy, and they've got an extra chunk of money that's kind of sitting around that they want to diversify
With
with.
kind of stocks and shares and those sorts of investments, obviously, usually there's a kind of quite a lot of screening that goes into, making a distinction between a sophisticated and unsophisticated investor, and there are certain criteria. And obviously, if you're selling it as a financial service, there's kind of lots of codes of conduct and regulation that you need to be able to kind of follow when you're looking at investment for kind of real estate and property. Is there regulations that you need to follow, or is it quite like you can make your agreements? It's a private agreement between two people. You negotiate what the deals are, and then you're good to go. Or is there any kind of external thing that you're being, you've got to abide by?
That's a really good question too, and there is
Right.
at a certain level. So the next level of development that I haven't gotten into yet, but that we
Hmm.
probably will pretty soon is
Right.
called a syndication, and that's when you go out and raise a larger chunk of money, and you have a project sponsor, and you have a general partner, and those are for projects where you're raising probably over $5
Hmm.
million. Um, is how I've had it described to me. And that's kind of the next level of development that we'll be getting into hopefully within 2 years, I would say. But the way that we're doing it is we're doing a promissory note that's in a second position to the hard money lender, basically. So it's an agreement between two people and a private loan. So it isn't regulated like syndications are, where you have to they're much more carefully regulated. The what is it? The FCC, the anyway the American regulatory entity that covers financial transactions is more concerned with those. But the way that we're doing it right now is pretty simple. It's just a
Mhm.
promissory note, um, secured by this real
And
estate
so,
project.
and so in that note, you're kind of agreeing. You can't obviously. I imagine you can't agree specifically what the returns are, but you give an idea of what the returns are going to be, and that there's a kind of a level of investment that is expected to be returned, or you kind of outline what the risk is with it.
Yeah, so I mean, we outline the risk, and then we say we actually provide a
Hmm.
15% fixed return. So no matter what, that's the minimum return, and then we do profit sharing up to 18% typically on that, and that's there's a clause in the agreement that says, if the promissory note doesn't cover anything beyond the project, basically. So if the project gets liquidated, you get what's left over after the hard money lender gets paid, and I don't get paid in that situation. So there is risk, and we outline that risk, but we have always been able to pay a 15%. Well, we've always paid
Right.
over a 15% return,
And
actually.
so, is there
Uh,
there's a sequence then as well when you're kind of when you've got this debt stack where you're kind of bringing in finance from other positions, that there is somebody who's at the top of the pile of getting paid back if anything were to go wrong. How is that correct? And how do you structure that?
That is correct. Absolutely. Yeah. So there's different positions. The hard money lender is
Right.
in first position, and in a bigger project that would be your commercial
Hmm.
lender, your bank. This is like one level of higher risk lending than a bank. But they're in the first position. They have a lien on the project, and then our private money lenders are in
Hmm.
second position, and then I and my partner are in third
Right.
position.
Okay.
So, we don't get paid unless the project's profitable, but when it's profitable, we keep most of the profit, or the rest of the profit after the
Right. So
after
you
the
can
investors
negotiate
are
what the
paid out.
profit distribution is going to be, and people are kind of in line of priorities of who gets their money back first, and then that's part of your.
Exactly, exactly, and the hard money is just a
Mhm.
fixed rate, and that's coming down. It's maybe 10% now.
Got it.
Um,
Okay, so
so
that's all part and parcel of your sort of due diligence and how you're kind of navigating and mitigating your own risk.
yes, absolutely. And when we put these projects together, we have all the, kind of a sophisticated pro
Mhm.
forma spreadsheet where it accounts for all the lending costs and all the holding costs and everything else to make sure at the end of that project we're getting a
So
nice
once you
return.
completed this first kind of commercial project or the first flip, um, you went now you've got five on the books or five that you.
We've got
Okay.
5 in the books right now. We're off to the races this year, and we're hitting it hard. Our goal is to do 10
Wow.
projects this year, and since we've got 5 in the first month, we're making some serious
So
progress
so
towards
what do you
that
need
goal.
to now consider? Because now you're scaling up the whole entity, and it's and it is a big jump as well,
Exactly.
just even going
Yeah.
from one project to say to five in a year. What are the additional risks for you? Where's the money coming from? Like, what's the additional kind of complexity now that's coming with in investors? And yeah, how are you kind of navigating having five projects all at one time? How do you protect that kind of portfolio?
So, scaling up is the way to put it. I think that first year was still about like ironing out the wrinkles, improving the business
Hmm.
model works, and then now this year is about scaling and building the business, right? So, which is also something I'm having to learn a lot about, and unfortunately, in architecture school, they don't teach you a lot of entrepreneurialism, like how a business works and how do you do this. And, so I'm learning a lot about that now and, hiring people. So it's kind of I'm ready. It's not just one business, it's two businesses, right? Because the way I have things structured, I've got a development business over here, and I've got my architecture firm over here, and they're different entities. And I hire my architecture firm to do and I think actually that's a really important thing to note is I still hire my architecture firm to do the architecture for these projects. And I charge a good rate. Not like a full cost architecture rate, but I still am paying myself to do the design on these projects. And that's kind of what keeps the lights on and keeps the money coming in between
Mhm.
selling these projects. And that model is really good. And so I'm able to do it more efficiently, so it's not a burden to the projects like a normal architecture firm might be that's coming in and charging 15% or something like that. I'm able to do it more efficiently, but I'm still de-risking it for myself by paying myself to do the design
Mhm.
work along the way. Um, so that's kind of an aside there. But so I need to build these two companies at the same time. So I'm, hiring people on the development side, which is a very different skill set, and those are kind of project managers and virtual assistants and things like that, people that can do analysis and fundraising and outreach and project management. And then I'm hiring people on the architecture side to do, classic architecture stuff. But I look for people that are interested in doing this kind of development work because we're building it too. So they need to be able to do kind of a more cohesive construction administration, project management type of stuff than maybe is
You're not
typical for
working as the
architects.
GC as well? No.
No, we're not, but there's a lot of, typically we buy all our own materials and thing finishes and things like that. And so just there's a lot of like management work, extra management work to do on that side. We'll sometimes run our own subs and things like that too, where we'll have a GC, but we'll, take
Mhm.
scopes of work on it for ourselves and hire our own subs to do that to just keep it a little bit more
And just
efficient.
with the kind of the 5 projects that you've got going on now, are they kind of like a group of them or with one particular set of investors, or have you spread it evenly? There's different investors on different projects or
They're different
right.
investors for different projects, and there's one that's 3 ground up houses, so we're raising
Mhm,
quite a lot of money on that. We'll raise about 500K for that over the life of the project, and then the others are kind of
mhm.
extensive flips, and so those are, I would say are we probably have 10 investors spread out over those
Right,
5
okay.
projects.
And tell us a little bit about your courting process then for the investor. Like, where are you? I know you said you're kind of going out networking and meeting people, but that's not easy in itself. For a lot of people, like they can go to network meetings till they're blue in the face and they don't even meet anybody except for the barista who served them coffee. What are you doing there? What kind of meetings are you going to? How are you kind of introducing yourself, getting into these conversations, and how do you, eventually convince somebody or build up a relationship where they're willing to take a risk of investing money with you?
Well, so the specific meetings I think that I'm going to, and the ones that have been most productive, are these real estate
Hmm.
investment groups. And they're like all there to like hustle and share knowledge and exchange information and support each other. And it's been a really like strong networking experience. And I think when you start going to like real estate investment meetups and things like that, you'll find it's a very like um just a very easy thing because everybody wants to support each other and share knowledge and the developer meetups is a little bit more technical, a little bit more specific, but they're great too. And there's kind of a place where these two meet, where like real estate investment and development kind of meet, and there's a lot of crossover in these groups, and so I found it to be just a very hospitable and welcoming environment. And if you go out there and you know don't be shy about saying what you don't know. I go out there and I'd be like, "Hey, this is what I want to learn. This is what I have to offer," and ask people questions. And I've made friends from those groups, and it's just been a really positive experience. And so I would really encourage, everyone to kind of get outside of the architecture networking, still do that. It's important for professional development and everything else, but go network with some of these other groups, and I think you'll have a very positive experience. That being said, most of the investors all come from
Mhm.
friends and family and networks that I had already built up over the years. And that's just kind of a matter of talking about it, and I've found it to be more attraction than anything, where I'll just, like, present these projects and talk about them, and then people reach out to me, more so. And, you develop a book of people that you keep in touch with, and people that aren't interested now, but might be in 2 years and whatnot, but it's more attraction than anything else, I would
And
say.
you mentioned there earlier about kind of one of the criteria that you're looking for with investors is that they're not risking everything. They can financially they're in a position where this is an easy and comfortable investment for them to make. Are you also looking for their experience with investing or with development? Does that ever come into the mix?
Um, no, I wouldn't say that. I think with bigger projects, we'd be
Right.
looking for that. And when you start doing those syndications and things like that, you
Hmm.
have to have that, right? They have to be accredited investors and things like that. But at this level, it's more interest, right? I think a lot of people are interested in investing in real estate and development projects
Hmm.
because it's awesome. You're building something, you're contributing to the built environment and to these really cool creative projects that is making the world a better place rather than just making some fat cats at Apple or Tesla or
Hmm.
whatever richer, right? Like the stock market is one uncontrollable. Uh, you know, this you're actually building something, and I think people are really attracted to that. So when someone comes to me and is like, this is really cool, I want to be a part of that, that's a huge bonus to me, and they're on the team, and we can build something together, and we can kind of make our communities a better place through doing this, and provide housing for people in California, and do these beautiful projects that might not make it out there otherwise. It's attractive for people, and so I think when people are interested in that aspect of it,
Hmm.
that's like a huge bonus to me, where they're like, "Let's go build something
Great.
beautiful."
So with the five projects that you've got going on at the moment, you said a couple of them are like flips, and then the others are kind of ground up new houses. What's the plan with all of these? Are they going to be, the ones that are going to be flips? Obviously, you're selling them and taking a profit. Are any of the new build ones going to be something where you're going to kind of put into a portfolio and then retain them and then collect rental income, or is that for the next tier of projects?
That So I think that is something that we want to do long term. Money's a little
Hmm.
expensive right now to do buy and hold. It's very difficult to
Hmm.
get cash flow. So it's more of like a market timing and strategy thing than anything. So right now our goal is to sell all of these, and then the plan B would be to rent them out if the
Hmm.
market changes somehow. Um, but I love owning real estate, and I love cash flow, and that's that when that becomes more doable, I think that will be a big part of our strategy. And I think doing about 50-50, so holding on to half of the projects and for longer term, and selling half of the projects to get that capital kind of flowing through, is kind of would be my
Hmm.
long-term strategy. But I'd like to build up a portfolio of real estate over, and that's where you know selling a project and getting, a chunk of money is great, but like building equity and having cash flow over the long term is where like
Hmm.
true wealth comes from. Not only in making that money, but like having that time wealth, right? Like having something pay you when you're on vacation, like and just cash flow is an amazing thing to
Hmm.
buy your time back and have that, like, wealth I always define as the ability to do what
Hmm.
you want with your time, and that's kind of what money is good
So,
for.
with the projects that you've got going on now, when are you seeing that they are completed? And then tell us a little bit about the next level of development that you've got your eyes set on, or that you're beginning to.
Oh man, this is a fun topic. Yeah. So we've got our eyes on a bunch of projects. San Francisco is a really unique environment right now to do a large adaptive reuse project with an office building
Hmm.
to residential. Uh, And I'm fortunate to have worked on the largest office conversion on the West Coast in San Francisco, 100 Van Ness, which was a 40-story office tower that we converted to residential back when I was working at a big firm. And, um, and so I've got some experience with it. So we've got our eyes peeled for office projects in San Francisco, and everyone kind of wants this to happen. And they're on a fire sale right now, So there's this big opportunity to convert an office building in San Francisco. So we are looking at that right now, and any adaptive reuse project, I have a real soft spot for. For some reason, I love like taking these old historic buildings, and I've done a number of them over my career, and doing like a really cool modern insertion in it, and that kind of tension between the old and the new I find really interesting from a
Hmm.
design perspective. And so an adaptive reuse project is on the horizon, more adaptive reuse projects, and I think that's a really good way for architects to leverage your skill set on inner development perspective. And then, ground up um, custom homes, high end custom homes is a beautiful design problem. I love doing those. And so I want to start doing some more, just single family, like really well designed, really well detailed custom homes. And we're starting to do that in Napa now with our 3 unit development. And a boutique resort is always been a dream of mine. To do like a really cool boutique resort project. So that's on the horizon too. And that's kind of a lifestyle play too, right? Because my grand vision, goal, dream for that is to buy a beachfront piece of property in Panama somewhere, and develop a 12 unit boutique resort on it, and have that be a way to spend a few months a year down there
Hmm.
with friends and family. And there's a goal there to kind of get this amazing lifestyle built up while also making money for friends and family at the same time, and creating a space where we can all spend time together in the long term. And going back to wealth, like that's wealth to me, that like being able to spend time with people you love in environments that you really want to be in, is kind of a beautiful thing. So if I can couple that together with building something really cool,
Love it.
that's a win.
Amazing. And it's a perfect place to conclude the conversation there. Really inspiring stuff, Josiah. I think that's, kind of very much living the dream that many architects are kind of aspiring to. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience. And look forward to having you back on the show when you've got some of these other projects up and running as well, just to kind of see your progress and lessons learned.
I would love that. It's such a pleasure and honor. I really appreciate you having me on, Ryan. This is a really cool thing that you do, spreading this knowledge. And I've listened to and watched your show for so long and learned so much from it when I was getting ready to go out on my own, that I just like thank you for doing
Absolute
what you
pleasure.
do.
Thank you. And that's a wrap.
Hey, Enoch Sears here, and I have a request since you are a listener here of the Business of Architecture podcast. Ryan and I, we love putting this podcast together. We love sharing information as much as we can glean from all the other industries that we're a part of to bring it back to empower you as an architect and a designer. And one thing that helps us in our mission is the growth of this podcast, simply because it helps other architects stand for more of their value, spreads the business information that we're sharing to empower architects together so architects, designers, engineers can really step into their greatness, whatever that looks like for each individual. And so here my simple ask is for you to join us and be part of our community by doing the following: heading over to iTunes and leaving a review of the podcast. And as an expression of our sincere thanks, we would like to give you a free CEU course that can get you one professional development unit, but more importantly, will give you a very solid and firm foundation on your journey to becoming a profitable and thriving architect. So here's the process for that. After you leave us a review, send an email to support@businessofarchitecture.com. Let us know the username that you use to leave the review, and we will send you that free training. On the training, you'll discover what 99% of architecture firm owners wish they would have known 20 years ago.
Hello, listeners. We hope you're enjoying our show. We love bringing you these insightful conversations, but we couldn't do it without the support of our amazing sponsors. If you're a business owner or know someone who would be an excellent fit for our audience, we'd love to hear from you. Partnering with us means your brand will reach over 40,000 engaged listeners each month. Interested in becoming a sponsor? Please send us an email at support@businessofarchitecture.com. The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you be unstoppable.